The massive alien ships appeared silently in Earth's orbit one quiet Tuesday morning. Their arrival sent shockwaves through every major city, every small town, and every military installation across the globe. These vessels, with their strange crystalline structures that seemed to catch and reflect sunlight like massive diamonds in space, dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Captain Han stood on the bridge of the EDF Indomitable, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied the alien fleet through the reinforced viewport. 20 years of military service had prepared him for many things, but the sight before him still made his heart race. The Indomitable, Earth's flagship and pride of the unified defense fleet, felt tiny compared to these cosmic giants. Commander Kim stood at her station, her fingers moving swiftly across the holographic controls. Her face showed no fear, though Han knew her well enough to notice the slight tension in her shoulders. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, each person understanding the weight of this moment. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the largest vessel," Kim reported, her voice steady and professional. Han nodded. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, and for the first time in human history, Earth's defenders saw the face of an alien being. The creature that appeared before them had a head that reminded Han of an ancient samurai helmet, with sharp angles and protective plates. Its skin looked like polished obsidian, and what they assumed were eyes glowed with an inner purple light. Most striking were its mandibles, which moved in a way that seemed almost mechanical. "I am High Commander Rack of the Galactic Hegemony," the alien announced, its words translated by their computers into a flat, artificial voice. "Your world has been monitored for the past 50 of your years. You have reached a sufficient level of development to be integrated into our society." Han felt his jaw tighten. The aliens hadn't come to make friends or share knowledge. They had come to conquer. "Your resistance forces, while admirable for a species of your development stage, are insufficient," Rack continued. "Submit to integration, and your transition will be peaceful. Resist, and we will be forced to demonstrate our superiority. Your species will submit to integration. Resistance is." Han's hand slashed through the air, and Kim cut the transmission immediately. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of equipment. "Sir," Kim said quietly, "they're scanning our defensive systems." Han walked to the tactical display, where red dots showed the positions of the alien ships. He thought about his grandfather, who had fought in the last great war on Earth. "My boy," the old man had told him, "humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our stubborn refusal to bow to anyone who tries to make us kneel." "Commander Kim," Han said, his voice carrying across the bridge, "send our response." Kim's fingers moved across her console. "Ready, sir." Around the Earth, thousands of defense satellites that had been hidden in plain sight began to move. They had been disguised as communication relays, weather monitors, and space debris, a deception planned decades ago when humanity first detected signals from deep space. "All defense platforms, hold position," Han ordered. "All ships, maintain combat stance." He turned to face the main screen, where High Commander Rack's image had been. "Send this message to the Hegemony Fleet. This is Captain Han of the Earth Defense Force. Your demands are rejected. Earth belongs to humanity. You have 1 hour to leave our solar system." The bridge crew exchanged glances. Everyone knew what would happen next. They had trained for this scenario countless times. Humanity might be outnumbered and outgunned, but they wouldn't go down without a fight. As the message was transmitted, Han watched the alien ships through the viewport. Their crystalline surfaces caught the sunlight, creating rainbow patterns that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. He thought about all the people on Earth below, billions of souls who had just learned they weren't alone in the universe, only to find out their first contact would be with conquerors. "Sir," Kim reported, "we're receiving responses from all Earth Defense Force ships. They're ready for your orders." Han nodded, his expression grim. "Tell all commanders to prepare for Combat Protocol Alpha. If these aliens want Earth, They'll learn why humanity has survived everything our own world has thrown at us. He paused, looking at each member of his bridge crew. We may be smaller, we may be technologically behind, but we will show them why you should never corner a species that has spent its entire history fighting to survive. The next hour would determine the fate of humanity. As the defense satellites moved into their final positions and Earth's military forces prepared for what might be their greatest battle, Han remembered another thing his grandfather had told him. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest weapons. It's the one with nothing left to lose. Humanity had everything to lose, and they were ready to fight for it all. Science Officer Lee's hands trembled slightly as she organized her data tablets. The United Earth Council chamber stretched before her, its circular design filled with the most powerful leaders humanity had left. Emergency lighting cast long shadows across their faces, a necessary precaution since the hegemony could detect large power signatures. The council members whispered among themselves as Lee approached the central podium. Her footsteps echoed in the vast underground chamber, built deep beneath the ruins of Geneva. Above them, the city lay quiet, its people sheltered in subterranean bunkers as alien ships patrolled the skies. Lee activated her presentation, and a holographic display sprang to life, showing detailed scans of the hegemony vessels. The images rotated slowly, highlighting their crystalline structure and strange energy patterns. "Honorable council members," she began, her voice stronger than she felt. "After analyzing the data from our first engagement with the hegemony fleet, we've made a discovery that changes everything we thought we knew about them." Defense Minister Park sat forward in his chair, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic glow. The bags under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights coordinating Earth's defenses. "Explain," he commanded. "The hegemony's technology is advanced beyond ours in many ways," Lee continued, switching the display to show comparative energy readings. "They're faster than light travel. Their shield systems, their manufacturing capabilities, all of it surpasses our current level of development." Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Lee raised her hand for silence. "But there's something they never developed, something they don't understand. The hegemony has never encountered a species that created nuclear weapons." The chamber erupted in surprised conversations. Council member Jin stood up, his voice cutting through the noise. "That's impossible. How could they achieve space travel without discovering nuclear fission?" Lee switched the display again, showing a detailed analysis of hegemony power systems. Their entire civilization evolved along a different technological path. They harness energy through crystal manipulation and biological processes. Their ships don't use nuclear power. They use something akin to photosynthesis on a massive scale. Defense Minister Park leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "You're saying they don't understand what they're dealing with?" "With us." "Exactly," Lee confirmed, bringing up images of Earth's defense systems. "They consider us primitive because we still use what they see as crude chemical and nuclear reactions. But that's actually our greatest advantage. We mastered the power of the atom while they were still afraid to split it." The holographic display changed to show Earth's hidden arsenal. The fusion-powered ships, the nuclear deterrents, the plasma weapons that humans had developed through their understanding of atomic power. "Their scans can't even detect half of our capabilities because they don't know what to look for." A young council member from Africa raised her hand. "But surely they've encountered nuclear weapons before, in their conquests of other worlds." Lee shook her head. "That's the most fascinating part. In all their recorded history, no species they've encountered developed along our path. We're unique in our understanding of nuclear physics and its military applications." Defense Minister Park stood up, walking closer to the holographic display. "So when they scan our defenses, they're missing the biggest threat," Lee finished. "They see our conventional weapons, our spacecraft, our satellite network. But they can't detect our nuclear capabilities because their sensors aren't designed to look for them. It's like trying to read a language that uses a completely different alphabet." The implication slowly dawned on the council members. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They had a secret weapon that their enemies couldn't comprehend. There's more, Lee added, her voice growing stronger. Our analysis shows their crystalline ships have a fatal weakness. They're highly susceptible to radiation. A single tactical nuclear device could disable their largest vessels without destroying them. We wouldn't even need to use our strongest weapons. Defense Minister Park turned to face the council. So we're not as outmatched as they think we are. No, sir, Lee agreed. In fact, we might be the first species they've encountered that could actually hurt them. Their entire strategy of conquest relies on overwhelming technological superiority. But they've never faced an enemy that mastered the power of the atom. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity, considered primitive by their would-be conquerors, had developed weapons that could actually threaten the mighty hegemony. Their perceived weakness was actually their greatest strength. Prepare a detailed briefing for our military commanders, Park ordered. If what you're saying is true, we need to adjust our strategy immediately. The hegemony thinks they're dealing with primitive beings who will submit to their superior technology. It's time to show them just how dangerous primitive can be. As Lee gathered her data tablets, she caught sight of something she hadn't seen in weeks: hope in the eyes of Earth's leaders. Sometimes, she thought, the most powerful advantage isn't having superior technology, but having technology your enemy doesn't understand. The shuttle carrying Ambassador Choi docked with the hegemony flagship in perfect silence. Through the small viewport, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the blackness of space, surrounded by the crystalline forms of alien warships. As the airlock cycled, Choi straightened his simple black suit and touched the neural implant behind his ear. Humanity's only advantage hidden in plain sight. The hegemony guards that met him looked like walking crystals, their translucent bodies pulsing with inner light. They towered over him, nearly 9 feet tall, their movements rigid and precise. Their crystalline hands held weapons that looked more like works of art than tools of war. As they escorted him through the ship's corridors, Choi studied his surroundings. The walls seemed to be alive, shifting colors playing across their surface like oil on water. The air smelled sweet, almost like honey, but with a metallic undertone that made his nose itch. "The council awaits," one of the guards announced in that clicking language their translators had barely mastered. Choi didn't respond. He didn't need to. The diplomatic chamber was vast, clearly designed to intimidate visitors. The ceiling soared at least 30 feet high, and floating crystals provided soft, shifting light. 7 hegemony council members sat on raised platforms, their crystalline bodies refracting light across the room in rainbow patterns. They looked down at him like gods judging a mortal. Choi walked to the center of the chamber, his footsteps echoing. He carried nothing. No weapons, no devices, not even a datapad. He didn't need any of those things for what was about to happen. High Commander Rack's voice boomed through the chamber. "You stand before the eternal council of the hegemony. We have reviewed your species' pointless resistance. You will now hear the terms of your surrender." Choi allowed himself a small smile. "No." The translator conveyed his response, causing a ripple of clicking sounds among the council members. Rack's crystalline form shifted, colors darkening in what they had learned was anger. "You misunderstand, human. This is not a negotiation." "You're right," Choi replied calmly. "This is an ultimatum, but not yours. Ours." More clicking, this time with an edge of amusement. The council members' bodies flickered with patterns that suggested they were laughing. "We will not submit," Choi stated clearly, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Leave our space, or we will torch every world you hold dear." The translator conveyed his words, and the chamber erupted in clicking laughter. The council members' bodies pulsed with bright colors, their amusement clear even without translation. Rack leaned forward. "You threaten us. With what? Your primitive weapons cannot even scratch our smallest vessels." Choi touched his neural implant. "Watch." Somewhere in the void at the edge of the solar system, humanity's first fusion torch ship activated. The vessel, hidden in the shadow of a distant moon, powered up its main drive. The fusion reactor didn't just provide propulsion, it was the weapon itself. Through the chamber's massive viewport, a flash of light caught everyone's attention. One of Saturn's smaller, uninhabited moons suddenly glowed white-hot. The fusion torch's beam hit its surface with the power of a small star, and in seconds, the moon's surface began to melt. Within a minute, the entire moon was reduced to slag. Its surface turned to glass and vapor. The laughter stopped. Choi watched as the council members' colors shifted to darker hues. Their crystalline bodies vibrated at frequencies that suggested fear or shock. "That was one ship," Choi said into the silence. "We have hundreds, each one capable of reducing a planet's surface to molten rock, each one already positioned near your core worlds." He paused, letting that sink in. "We've studied your empire's structure. You have 27 primary worlds, 83 major colonies, and 112 significant outposts. We can torch them all within hours." You would not dare," Rack stammered, his crystalline form now a deep, troubled purple. "Such actions would violate every law of civilization." Choi's expression hardened. "You came to our world and demanded our submission. You threatened our existence. What makes you think we care about your laws?" He walked closer to the council's platforms, looking up at them. "Humanity spent centuries living under the threat of mutual assured destruction. We learned to survive knowing that we could destroy ourselves at any moment. Your people never developed nuclear weapons, never faced that fear. Then you don't understand what you're dealing with." The chamber remained silent as Choi delivered his final message. "You have 24 hours to withdraw all forces from Earth's space. After that, we start burning worlds, and we won't stop until either you're gone or everything you value is ash." As he turned to leave, one of the council members found their voice. "You would doom yourselves as well. The other races would never trade with you, never trust you." Choi paused at the door. Better to be feared and free than enslaved and respectable. 24 hours. Choose wisely. He walked out of the chamber, leaving behind a stunned silence. As he made his way back to his shuttle, Choi thought about how strange it was. These advanced aliens had never encountered a species that had mastered the art of mutual assured destruction. They had never faced an enemy who would rather burn everything than submit. They were about to learn why that was a serious mistake. Sub-Commander Song sat in the dimly lit monitoring station, her eyes fixed on the streams of intercepted hegemony communications flowing across multiple screens. The underground facility hummed with activity as analysts worked to decode and translate the constant flow of alien transmissions. What they found made her smile. "Another report from the Centauri sector," her assistant Yoon said, passing her a datapad. "They're calling it the Moon Incident now. The footage has spread to at least 30 more systems." Song took the pad, studying the grainy images of Saturn's destroyed moon. The hegemony had tried to suppress the recording, but their own people kept sharing it. The sight of an entire celestial body turned to slag had captured their collective imagination and their fears. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a particular transmission. "Their military channels are filled with debates about our capabilities. They can't figure out how we hid our fusion torch ships from their scans." Yoon leaned closer, his young face illuminated by the screen's glow. "They still don't understand nuclear technology, do they?" "No," Song replied, switching to another channel. "Their entire civilization developed along different lines. They can't even properly detect our weapons because they don't know what to look for." The screen showed hegemony news broadcasts from various systems. Their propaganda networks were working overtime, trying to paint humans as dangerous savages who needed to be contained. Images of Earth appeared, described as a death world that had spawned a species capable of wielding starfire as a weapon. "Commander," another analyst called out, "you need to see this. We're picking up unofficial communications from some of their conquered worlds." Song moved to the analyst's station, where a different kind of message was playing out. These weren't official hegemony broadcasts. They were encrypted transmissions between members of subjugated species. They spoke in hushed tones about Earth, about the humans who had stood up to their conquerors. They're sharing stories about us. Hume observed, his voice quiet with awe. Look at how they're describing Earth, like it's some kind of legendary warrior planet. Song nodded, watching as more messages poured in. The hegemony's attempt to frighten their population with tales of human savagery had backfired spectacularly. Instead of fear, they had created fascination. The subjugated species saw something different in the stories. They saw hope. They're calling us demons, Hume noted, reading from a fresh translation. The demons who could not be conquered, who threatened to burn the heavens themselves. Song's smile widened. Good. Let them fear us. Fear might keep them from making a terrible mistake. She paused, watching a new batch of transmissions come in. But more importantly, let them see that the hegemony isn't invincible. The monitoring station fell quiet as a particularly interesting transmission came through. It was from a species that had been under hegemony control for centuries. They were sharing detailed accounts of Earth's defiance, but with their own addition. Technical questions about human weapons. They're not just telling stories, Song realized. They're trying to learn from us. They want to know how we did it. Yoon looked concerned. Should we try to contact them? Share our knowledge? Song shook her head. Not yet. For now, let the legend grow. Let them whisper about Earth, about the humans who dared to say no. Let every story of our defiance spark a little more courage in those who hear it. She turned to address the entire monitoring station. Keep tracking these unofficial channels. I want to know every story they're telling about us. Every rumor, every whispered hope. The hegemony thought they could use fear to control their empire. They never considered what would happen when their own people became more afraid of us than them. The screens continued to fill with new transmissions. Songs were being composed about the destruction of Saturn's moon. Artists in secret corners of the hegemony were creating images of Earth's fusion torch ships, imagining them as great dragons breathing starfire. The story of humanity's defiance was transforming into something larger than life. Look at this one, Yoon said, pointing to a new message. They're calling Earth the world of firebringers. They're saying we're the first species to ever make the hegemony retreat. Song watched as more messages poured in, each one spreading the story further. The hegemony had ruled through fear for millennia, but they had never faced a species that understood fear as intimately as humans did. They had never encountered a civilization that had lived with the knowledge of its own potential destruction, that had turned that knowledge into strength. Send word to command, Psalm ordered. Tell them our psychological warfare campaign is exceeding all expectations. The hegemony wanted to make an example of us. Instead, we're becoming a symbol of resistance. As the night shift came on duty, Song remained at her station, watching the fear and hope spread across the stars. Sometimes, she thought, the most powerful weapon isn't the one that causes the most destruction. It's the one that makes people believe that change is possible. The underground command center thrummed with nervous energy as General Bai studied the massive holographic display before him. Hundreds of points of light represented known hegemony worlds, each one carefully mapped and analyzed over months of covert surveillance. The blue glow from the display cast harsh shadows across his weathered face. Sir, the last fusion torch ship is in position, Captain Shin reported, her voice steadied despite the weight of what they were about to do. Strike Group 7 has confirmed their targeting coordinates. Bai nodded, his eyes never leaving the display. Each glowing dot represented billions of lives, civilians who had never chosen this conflict. The thought weighed heavily on him, but he remembered Earth's own civilians, huddled in underground shelters as alien ships patrolled their skies. Show me the coverage analysis, he ordered. The hologram shifted, overlaying red circles that represented each fusion torch ship's effective range. The ships were humanity's ultimate deterrent, vessels powered by artificial suns, capable of projecting that devastating energy across space to turn worlds to slag. 97% coverage of all major hegemony worlds. Shin confirmed, bringing up the detailed statistics. The remaining 3% are outlying colonies with minimal strategic value. Behind them, in the vast chamber that served as Earth's military nerve center, hundreds of officers and technicians worked at their stations. The room was carved deep into a mountain, safe from orbital bombardment. The air was thick with tension. Everyone understood that they were about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. The torch protocol is ready for activation, Shin continued, her fingers dancing across her control panel. Each ship has its designated target. If they attack Earth, they lose everything. Bai finished, his voice grim. Make sure they understand that. There's no victory in this scenario, only mutual destruction. As if in response to his words, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Red warning lights pulsed as reports flooded in from Earth's outer defense perimeter. Multiple hegemony signatures detected, an officer shouted. They're moving in attack formation. At least 300 ships. Ba's expression hardened. They're testing us. They don't believe we'll actually do it. He turned to Shin. Send the warning. Make it clear what happens next. Shin transmitted the message to the approaching hegemony fleet. This is Earth Defense Command. You have entered restricted space. Any hostile action will trigger immediate implementation of the Torch Protocol. All designated hegemony worlds will be reduced to slag. This is your only warning. The response came quickly, a barrage of energy weapons that lit up Earth's orbital defense grid. The hegemony had made their choice. They're firing on our outer platforms, Shin reported, her voice tight. Shield grid is holding, but they're pressing the attack. Ba stood straight, his decision made. Initiate Torch Protocol. Authorization code, Phoenix Rising. The command center erupted into activity as the order was relayed to the waiting torch ships. But before the first ship could fire, something unexpected happened. The nearest hegemony vessel exploded. Then another, and another. Sir, Shin called out, excitement in her voice. Our conventional defenses. They had no idea. The hegemony fleet had expected to face primitive weapons. Instead, they found themselves being torn apart by technologies they had dismissed as inadequate. Humanity's nuclear-powered weapons, developed over centuries of warfare, proved devastatingly effective against their crystalline ships. Their shields can't handle radiation, an analyst reported. Our nuclear-tipped missiles are bypassing their defenses completely. They never developed countermeasures because they never faced this kind of attack before. Bai watched as the mighty hegemony fleet began to crumble. Ships that had conquered countless worlds were being systematically destroyed by the very weapons they had mocked as primitive. The few survivors began to retreat, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos. Hold the torch ships, Bai ordered. Let them run. Let them tell the others what happened here. As the last hegemony ships fled, leaving their dead and dying behind, Shin approached her commander. Sir, should we pursue? Ba shook his head, watching the holographic display update with the battle's results. No. They came here expecting to find savages with crude weapons. Instead, they found out why you should never underestimate a species that spent its entire history preparing for its own extinction. The command center slowly returned to normal operations, but something had changed. They had proved that humanity could not only threaten the hegemony, they could hurt them. The torch ships remained ready, a sword hanging over the enemy's head, but it was humanity's primitive weapons that had won the day. Send word to all commands, Bai ordered. The Torch Protocol remains in effect, but now they know we don't need it to defeat them. Sometimes the best weapon isn't the most powerful one. It's the one your enemy doesn't understand how to fight. The starlit chamber on Luna Base 1 buzzed with activity as Commander Kang watched another group of alien representatives sign the Freedom Charter. The delegates, tall beings with iridescent scales, moved with a grace that seemed almost liquid. They were the Meridians, the seventh species to break away from the hegemony in the past month. We never dreamed this was possible. The Meridian ambassador said, her scales shifting colors with emotion. For 10,000 years, our people lived under their rule. We thought resistance was impossible. Kang smiled, remembering Earth's own first days of defiance. Sometimes all it takes is one example to change everything, she said, gesturing to the massive window that showed Earth hanging like a blue jewel in space. The lunar conference room had been specially designed for these meetings. Its transparent dome offered a clear view of both Earth and the stars beyond, a constant reminder of what they were fighting for. Representatives from a dozen different species mingled together, their various forms creating an almost artistic display of galactic diversity. "Tell me," the Meridian ambassador asked, her voice filled with curiosity, "how did your people first learn to resist? To fight back against forces so much more powerful?" Kang led her to a large display table, activating it with a wave of her hand. The holographic projection showed Earth's history of warfare and resistance. "We learned the hard way," she explained. "Through centuries of fighting each other, we developed technologies and strategies that the hegemony never considered." The display shifted to show Earth's nuclear development, its fusion technology, its mastery of radiation-based weapons. The Meridian ambassador watched with wide eyes as she saw how a supposedly primitive species had created tools that could challenge an empire. "But it's not just about weapons," Kang continued, switching the display to show Earth's defensive systems. "It's about the will to resist, the determination to remain free, no matter the cost." Across the room, other conversations were taking place. Human scientists worked with alien engineers, showing them how to detect nuclear signatures, how to build their own defensive systems. Medical experts exchanged knowledge about radiation protection and treatment. It wasn't charity. It was investment in a future where no species would have to bow to another. "Commander," her aide interrupted, "the Centaurian delegation has arrived. They're requesting immediate assistance with their planetary defense grid." Kang nodded. The Centaurians had been among the first to rebel after seeing Earth's successful resistance. Their crystalline bodies, similar to the hegemony's but smaller and more delicate, sparkled as they entered the chamber. "Show us how to defend ourselves," their leader asked without preamble. "Our people are ready to fight, but we need to know how." And humanity did show them. Not just the weapons and the shields, but the strategies, the tactics, the mindset that had kept Earth free. They taught them about guerrilla warfare, about asymmetric conflicts, about using an enemy's strengths against them. The revolution spread across the galaxy like wildfire, not through conquest or domination, but through the simple act of showing others how to stand up for themselves. Each newly freed species brought their own knowledge, their own technologies, their own ways of fighting. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Kang's second-in-command remarked, watching as human instructors worked with alien students. "We thought we were alone in our resistance, but we were just the first to show it was possible." The hegemony's response was predictable. They tried to crush each rebellion as it arose, but they found themselves facing enemies who fought differently now. Species they had dominated for millennia suddenly knew how to exploit their weaknesses, how to bypass their defenses, how to strike where it hurt most. "Another success report," an aide announced, bringing Kang a datapad. "The Proxima colonies have driven out their hegemony overseers. No casualties on either side. The crystals simply left when they realized they couldn't control the population anymore." Kang studied the report with satisfaction. This was how empires fell, not always through violence, but through the steady erosion of their power. The hegemony was learning that fear only worked when people believed they had no choice. As the day drew to a close, Kang stood at the lunar chamber's window, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, more species were learning, preparing, gathering courage. The revolution wasn't just about weapons or technology. It was about hope, about showing others that resistance wasn't futile. "Commander," the Meridian ambassador approached her one last time. "My people have a saying. The strongest chain is the one that binds willing hearts. Thank you for showing us how to break our chains." Kang nodded, thinking of all the species yet to find their courage. "Remember this feeling," she said. "Remember what it's like to stand up for the first time. And when you meet others still in chains, show them how to stand too." The revolution continued to spread, one lesson at a time, one world at a time, until the stars themselves seemed to shine with newfound freedom. The new Galactic Coalition headquarters gleamed in the morning sun, its crystalline spires rising from the heart of Geneva like a monument to possibility. 10 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the hegemony, 10 years that had changed the galaxy forever. Ambassador Choi adjusted his formal attire as he looked out over the assembly hall. Representatives from over 200 species filled the chamber, their diverse forms creating a living tapestry of galactic life. Among them, he spotted several crystalline forms, former hegemony worlds that had chosen a different path. "It's time, Ambassador," his aide whispered. Choi nodded and walked to the central podium. The same podium where just a decade ago he had delivered humanity's ultimatum to the hegemony. Now it would serve a different purpose. "Representatives of the galaxy," he began, his voice carrying across the hushed chamber. "Today we mark not just the end of an era, but the beginning of something new. The hegemony hadn't fallen through war or violence, though there had been battles. It had crumbled because its power was built on illusions, the illusion of invincibility, the illusion of absolute control. Humanity had shown the galaxy a different path, one where strength came from cooperation rather than domination. 10 years ago, we stood alone," Choi continued. "We were ready to burn worlds to maintain our freedom. Today we stand together, not because of threats or fear, but because we choose to." The final accords lay before him on the podium. The document that would formally establish the Galactic Coalition, not an empire, but a partnership of free worlds. Each species would maintain its independence while working together for common goals. In the front row, he spotted the Meridian Ambassador, her scales shimmering with emotion. Next to her sat representatives from dozens of formerly subjugated species, each with their own story of liberation. Not through human intervention, but through their own courage, guided by the example Earth had set. "Our greatest weapon was never our technology," Choi said, his voice softening. "It was the idea that resistance was possible, that freedom was worth any price." He looked at the crystalline delegates, their forms refracting light across the chamber. Even they had changed, learning that true power came not from controlling others, but from working with them. The former hegemony worlds had discovered that cooperation yielded better results than conquest. "The threat of absolute destruction led us to lasting peace," Choi remarked, picking up the ceremonial pen. "Humanity's darkest innovation became the galaxy's brightest hope. Not because of its destructive power, but because it showed us all that no force in the universe is truly invincible." As he signed the accords, Choi thought about how far they had come. The fusion torch ships that had once been positioned to burn worlds now powered peaceful exploration vessels. The knowledge of nuclear physics that had made humanity feared was now freely shared, helping other species develop clean energy and medical treatments. One by one, representatives from each world came forward to add their signatures. Each signing represented not just their world, but the choice they had made, to stand together as equals, to build something greater than themselves. "Let the galaxy remember this day," Choi concluded, after the last signature was placed. "Not as the day an empire fell, but as the day we all chose to rise together." The chamber erupted in celebration, hundreds of species expressing joy in their own unique ways. The crystalline beings glowed with internal light, the meridian scales created rainbow patterns, and human applause mixed with alien sounds of approval. Later, as the formal ceremonies concluded, Choi stood at the same window where he had once watched hegemony ships darken Earth's skies. Now he saw vessels of all designs peacefully sharing orbit, their crews working together to build something new. "Did you ever imagine this?" asked the Meridian Ambassador, joining him at the window. "When you made that first threat to burn their worlds?" Choi smiled, watching a former hegemony ship dock alongside an Earth vessel. "No," he admitted, "we were ready to destroy everything to remain free. Instead, we ended up building something better than we could have imagined." The sun set over the new Galactic Coalition headquarters, its last rays catching the crystalline spires and creating a dazzling display of color. Somewhere in the galaxy, the last remnants of the hegemony were accepting that their time had passed, not because they had been defeated in battle, but because they had been shown a better way. Humanity's defiance had lit a spark, but it was the galaxy's choice to nurture that spark into a flame of freedom. The threat of mutual destruction had created the opportunity for mutual understanding, and in that understanding, they had all found something worth preserving.